Ohio, born and raised, and just happy to be able to spread truth about the polluting oil and gas and petrochemical industries, and to try to educate people about how to empower ourselves with the truth, with the science, to create a better vision here in the Ohio Valley for future generations. I would like to just give a little bit more information first here about this Mountaineer NGL storage facility. If constructed, this facility would develop underground caverns for the storage of natural gas liquids or NGLs. In caverns, and these materials are highly flammable, and they have explosive compounds, and they're used in the petrochemical production. And this site is very problematic for many reasons. First and foremost, it's located directly beside Clarington, Ohio, in Monroe County. And also, it's a mile away from their drinking water supplies. This facility in Monroe County would hold up to 3.25 million gallons of these hazardous liquids, and they would be stored adjacent to and potentially underneath the Ohio River, posing a significant threat to public health and the environment in the Ohio River Valley and way beyond. Before Mountaineer NGL Storage LLC, just keep in mind these companies are LLCs, which means they can pack up and go home, and we're left as the taxpayers to deal with, any cleanup or mess they leave. In order to operate, its sister company, Powhatan Salt Company LLC, has to make the underground caverns. According to the facility's permit application, Powhatan Salt Company would withdraw approximately 1,928 gallons of fresh water from the Ohio River, and this would be each day to carve out the storage cavern. More caverns, each of which would require an estimated 380,200,000 gallons of water, could eventually be constructed to increase the storage capacity. Once injected underground, those millions of gallons of fresh water will become a salty brine, nasty mixture, and they'll no longer be able to be used for recreation, agriculture, or drinking water supplies. The other part about this is that an enormous brine reservoir would be constructed near the bank of the Ohio River to pressurize the storage caverns as the natural gas liquids are removed. We fear brine from this reservoir could contaminate underground sources of drinking water on the Ohio River, potentially compromising the drinking water source for 5 million people. Additionally, at least 3 pipelines would carry brine and natural gas liquids beneath the Ohio River, creating a risk of explosions and contaminating our community's water supplies with this toxic, salty brine. The Mountaineer facility also places local residents at serious risks of hazardous air pollutants. NGL vapors are heavier than air and pose a particular threat to the Ohio River Valley. In local communities. The other important fact about this particular facility is that it would likely only permanently employ 12 workers. And not only our local authorities, but also our governor and state representatives and senators have all promoted this petrochemical industry about job creation. And that's certainly not the case here. And there's much evidence that the amount of job creation from not only the fracking industry, but also the petrochemical industry has been vastly exaggerated. And this would further entrench our region in a frack-based petrochemical industrial future, reliant upon major polluters, such as the Dilly's Bottom ethane cracker plant proposed for construction by Thailand-based PTT Global. PTT Global already received $70 million in public funds for that project. The public had no say in that decision made by state officials. These projects would cause an explosion of the ongoing fracking-related harms in the valley, including the barging of radioactive frack waste on the Ohio River for processing and disposal here in Ohio. If you saw the Mountaineer NGL Storage Company LLC, they recently announced plans to explore interest in storing carbon-free hydrogen at the company's facility. Make no mistake, this project, as proposed, would still contribute to worsening the climate crisis. Any hydrogen stored at Mountaineer will, for the present and for many years in the future, not be green. If Mountaineer stores hydrogen, it would be manufactured using fossil fuels and would not reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And Mountaineer has said nothing about scrapping its plans to store hazardous natural gas liquids produced from fracking in its caverns. This is misleading to the public. The existing application materials for drilling these solution mining wells do not contain enough information for anyone to evaluate the safety of these operations. The permit application materials do not fully consider the area's geology, including potential migration pathways to underground sources of drinking water. The company must present a substantial plan to prevent underground sources of drinking water contamination in the event of a leak, well failure, or other emergency. We deserve better than to be left out of these decisions made by outside profiting investment firms that would condemn the region to an even greater pollution, denying us the opportunity for cleaner and more sustainable jobs in this area and in growth industries. It's time to place the people over profit and secure a future for our region, a much better future. We aim to fight for this, and we're hoping all of you here tonight will join us in that fight, for our children. Thank you.
Can I share screen now, Ben?
Yes, and Alex, we're very happy that you're with us tonight, and I'm so looking forward to your presentation. And yeah, he has lots to teach us, so thank you, Alex.
You're very welcome. Let me get all sorted here. Can everybody see that?
It's good. Thanks, Alex.
Cool. Yeah, as I was introduced, I'm Alex Cole. I'm from the borderlands of Putnam and Mason County in West Virginia. I work for Ohio Valley Environmental Coalition out of Huntington. And I'm here today to present this, not because I'm any kind of expert. I'm just a river rat kid from Fraser's Bottom, West Virginia. And I start my presentation on this Mountaineer Storage Hub facility with a picture of the Kanawha River, not the Ohio. The Kanawha River is the largest inland, largest river completely inside the borders of West Virginia. Hopefully many of you from the area and you know it well. If you've ever passed through West Virginia on I-64, you've seen it. If you've ever gone through Charleston, you've seen it. The Kanawha River is polluted beyond repair. For decades, Monsanto and FMC dumped PCBs and dioxin freely in the Kanawha River, as well as many, many other chemical plants. The Kanawha Valley is known as the Chemical Valley. And this is my parents' house is right up to the right, up on the riverbank right here in Fraser's Bottom. And I've never been able to swim in the Kanawha River. My mom wouldn't allow it. I grew up hearing stories from my mom about when she grew up playing on the river in the 60s and 70s, burying dead fish from fish kills. The PCBs and dioxin are so, the sediment in the river is so full of PCBs and dioxin. The Kanawha River does not meet minimum drinking water standards for any community along its course. So even though we live right here on all this water, we can't get our drinking water. None of the municipalities can get their drinking water from this. And you might remember a chemical spill 7 years ago to this month that contaminated drinking water for 300,000 people around the city of Charleston, the complete, pretty much the entire metropolitan area of our capital city. And that was so bad because of this. The entire city of Charleston is down to one drinking water intake because of pollution in this river. And I'm saying all this because this is what I don't want to see on the Ohio, because the Ohio is drinking water source, as Jill said, for 5 million people, including the cities of Cincinnati and Louisville and everybody downriver from what we'll talk about today. So little side tangent on the Kanawha River. Again, I'm no expert, but I've experienced this firsthand. And honestly, I didn't even know it was that weird until I was in college and it was a hot day and I had a friend from Ohio down and he said, let's go swimming. And I said, where? What do you mean? And he's like, what? There's a river right there. And I said, you don't want to swim in that river. You don't want to swim in the Chemical Valley. You don't want to swim in the Kanawha River. But what we're here to talk about today is underground storage, as Jill said, proposed by Powhatan Salt Company LLC and Mountaineer Storage Ventures. You might think they're a local outfit, but they're actually headquartered in Denver, Colorado. And this is part of a much broader scheme for the Ohio River Valley that our politicians and industry have been talking about for a long time to make this a petrochemical corridor, similar to that in the Gulf, to avoid the hurricanes that happen in the Gulf. And that sounds relatively benign. It's called the Appalachian Storage Hub. Again, sounds relatively benign, but that is a plan to make this entire river valley pretty much a refinery complex, mostly to make plastics and petrochemicals. And we'll talk today about Mountaineer Storage Hub. This is actually Mountaineer Storage Facility. This is actually a map made by WVU exploring storage potential in the valley. And we're talking about this little red circle here inside this big blue circle. And this is an underground salt formation, the Salina F4 salt formation. And this is what they want to do with it. To give you a little more local view, here is Moundsville. My cursor is not working, but Moundsville in this little blue box is actually where the Mountaineer Storage Facility is proposed to be. But that'll give you some idea for you locals with us tonight. Ben, I'm actually having trouble because it's telling me there's people in the waiting room and it won't let me do anything.
Let me take a look.
Can you still see my screen?
Yeah, we can still see your screen. Yep, I see that.
If I could add something,
cursor.
This is Jill again. I've explored this site many times. I've hiked all over it. And one of the things that I actually remembered earlier today when I was thinking about this presentation is that there's a graveyard right there. The Clarington ball fields are pretty much the adjacent property. There many times I've been down there, and there's an active fracking rig right on the hill above it. Also, Alex, isn't there coal mining activity or former coal mining activity in that area as well?
Yeah, I have that all in this, but I'm sorry for the technical difficulties, guys. Computers, right?
Maybe if you let the people in the waiting room in and then try it again.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to do that.
Maybe make Ben the host again and he can do
Yeah,
it and then
if you can make me host
give
for a
it back.
That would probably be it.
There we go.
All right.
Okay.
Are we ready to go share screen again?
Yeah, do you want to try it again?
Now it's telling me I could admit people. Sorry, guys, the cursor was just disappeared on me, so made it kind of hard.
It's not working. Alex, why don't I screen share your presentation if yours isn't working?
It seems to have frozen.
Gotcha.
Thanks for your patience, everyone.
I appreciate it.
I wish we could be all together having this meeting, but looking forward to that in the future for sure. We definitely miss the in-person meetings. Wonderful way to connect and get support. And yeah, so as soon as we're able, we look forward to having everybody with us.
Oh, Lord. Sorry, guys. I have it reopened now, Ben. If we
Okay.
can just share
Yeah.
from like we were doing. I hope
I'm gonna go ahead and try that now.
no one pops up because that seems to be the problem. Yeah, so that was just general overlay of where we are. Can you see my screen now?
Yeah.
Yes.
So this is where we're talking about. Again, it's just south of Moundsville, just as Jill said, 1 mile north of Clarington, and their drinking water wells. What could go wrong? But I'm going to let the industry explain what they're doing here. And I want you to notice how much time they spend talking about the well casing, because that's a very important part of this.
Is there sound with the video?
Yeah, I can't hear anything.
Alex, did you hear that?
You all hear the video?
We cannot hear the video.
I'm sorry, guys. Yeah, this video just shows the process of drilling the hole and the casings, and they spend a lot of time on the casings because that's pretty much the most important component of this, and that is what most often fails. So they want to really make you think that this is safe, but as you're going to see, there are a lot of things that can go wrong. Later in this video, and I might just skip ahead, this is where they are making the cavern. They are just pumping water underground to dissolve the salt and create a cavity so they can later put natural gas liquids and maybe even hydrogen in these holes. But this is another area of concern. This is the above ground saltwater lake that they will have to make, and they have to make this and keep some saltwater on hand, because as they pump natural gas liquids in and out of the cavern, they have to pump water back in, as you can see over here to the right, to keep the roof on the cavern. They have to keep the cavern under pressure at all times, or it could collapse, and they do collapse for various reasons that we'll get into. But so just keep in mind here, we're not just talking about the underground cavern, which is scary enough. We're not just talking about a well casing, which could blow out. We're also talking about a saltwater lake that they want to put next to the river. They also need to build multiple pipelines, as Jill mentioned. There'll have to be a pipeline, multiple pipelines, 3 to start with. There's 3 of these caverns they want to make right next to the river and under the river at a depth of about 1.25 miles, 7,000 feet. But they have to have pipelines piping the natural gas liquids in. They also have to have saltwater brine pipelines that are very susceptible to rust and leak, the older they get, running south of here, crossing the river and supplying chemical plants in West Virginia at Natrium. If you've ever driven down Route 2 right there and you've driven through the multiple miles of chemical plants, natrium facility there to make chlorine. They want to take some of the salt and make chlorine out of it. There also has to be, you know, not just the propane and butane coming in, but the propane, butane, ethane coming out. And the reason Moundsville is up here so prominent is one of the main purposes for this, as Jill said, is to feed the ethane cracker, the potential ethane cracker up here in Dilly's Bottom, right across the river from Moundsville. That cracker is getting less and less likely by the day. So if, you know, hydrogen, they seem to be showing their hand, and they say they want to potentially store hydrogen in these caverns to feed a power plant south of here. And hydrogen, I mean, the Hindenburg, it's even more explosive than ethane, and even slipperier and harder to keep in, because, you know, hydrogen is pretty smallest element on the periodic table, from what I remember from chemistry class, what little I remember. But here is what they want it to look like, and there is no audio for this video. I don't. This is traveling south on 7. You'll see, obviously on the left is real life. On the right is what the industry wants to build. You'll see on the right coming up soon, or maybe we already passed it. There's a rail yard to bring in the natural gas in and out on trains. Again, Jill said like 12 people total. This isn't a big facility on the surface, but this is a huge facility underground. And as you see us pivot here to the right, you'll see the above ground lake. This is super salinated water in the floodplain, a dam and a lake built on the floodplain, and all this scruffy stuff up on the right, or on the left, sorry, kind of hard. This patchy stuff right here, and you can see it on the industry video as well right here. That's actually a mountaintop removal site in a valley fill. If you drive through here and you check out this little creek here, it's bright orange. So just highlighting that to show this is layers upon layers of environmental catastrophe. This is coal mine land. This is a former salt mine as well. And you'll see that coming into play later, because there's a history of salt mining here. There are old wells all over the area dating back to the 1800s when they first started doing solution mining here. And that is a huge problem that is not addressed in the permits. There are no records probably for some of these old wells, but they haven't even bothered to look for these old wells. So who knows? Who knows? This right here, again, this is the same area we're talking about. Here's the mountaintop removal site. The lake would be right here. The floodwaters of the Ohio are the blue line, so that comes right up to the toe of the dam. This is Route 7, which has been underwater before. And these are the wells. The little purple diamonds are the wells, again, right next to the river. And this purple line is the potential route for the pipeline that would feed this mess and go back and forth to Natrium. And Jill mentioned, and I'm hoping this works, I already had this set up before I had to exit out of everything, but here is the Ohio DNR's map for underground mines. And right here, sorry guys, like I said, I had this already open. Right here is the area we're talking about. And the green blob is the mountaintop removal site that I've been pointing out as a landmark. These are actually right under the lake, and these are abandoned mine openings. I haven't quite figured out if they're actually like vents or they are old salt wells. But right under where they put the lake, here is a map from the ODNR showing mine openings right under the lake. This weird yellow pattern here, that is longwall mining. That is longwall mining, takes all the coal seam and just leaves the roof to fall in. So that is under this. If you see, it's actually under the green part too. It's a layer under the green part. And here's even more interesting. If you click on this mine here, which is an underground mine, a traditional underground mine, read it, partially known extents. They don't know how far this mine extends. And there's several of these in the general area. Right here is another one, here's a big one, partially known extent. So the ODNR doesn't even know exactly what's under this facility, and they have not taken any of that into account in these permits. So back to my presentation. Sorry guys, I keep having to omit people in the middle, and I'm sure you're seeing that. This is the what could go wrong. And I told you we had examples of what could go wrong. This is the Bayou Corn sinkhole in Assumption Parish, Louisiana. It was a very similar facility to this. It was underground storage in salt caverns. What happened here is an oil well was being drilled nearby, and it pierced the sidewall of the cavern, and the whole thing collapsed. This salt formation in Louisiana is twice as deep as ours. The roof is 2.5 miles from the surface. Ours would be 1.25 miles from the surface. And you might think better, worse, whatever. That means the roof of the cavern is thicker and safer in my, non-expert opinion, but ours would be half as deep as this. The release of butane in this case, which is one of the things they want to store here, 25 million cubic feet had to be burnt off. And that was just to release pressure because it was coming up from everywhere. I don't want you all to think of this as like a big bubble coming out of the ground in one big go. I want you to think of the roof collapsing, opening up all kinds of cracks and fissures and geysers. And that's how this happens. This spreads out into the surrounding area and stuff starts bubbling up from God knows where. And in many of these cases, they only could find where stuff was coming up via satellite. So the sinkhole that occurred, 37 acres of sinkhole, and 350 residents had to be evacuated. There's no way to fix these things once they go wrong. How could you? It's 2 miles deep. It's 1.25 miles deep in our case. Here's a video of what happened from the ground. And I just want everybody to imagine this, but the Ohio River over top. There is audio, but it's unimportant. You'll see. Again, imagine this, but under the Ohio River. I'm going to say it more, I know, but this is all just what could go wrong. This very seriously could happen if they hollered out salt caverns in Monroe County, Ohio. All gone. Oop. Having trouble changing slides. Here's another situation that could very well happen here. You guys might have heard this in the news. This is Aliso Canyon methane lake. It was a slightly different type of storage. This was an old natural gas field that had been depleted. But it's a similar well. It's a casing. Again, they talk about the casing really long in that video because they want to prove to us it's safe. But this was a casing like any other that cracked and blew out. It leaked for 4 months. They had to evacuate several of the local suburbs. This is just outside of Los Angeles. 97,000 tons of methane, 7,300 tons of ethane leaked into the atmosphere. Again, just a very simple blowout. Here's some aerial footage of this LiDAR footage of this and aerial footage just to show what it looked like, invisible to the naked eye, but leaking for months. And as some of you may know, methane particularly has 80 times the greenhouse heat trapping capacity of CO2. So it breaks down a little faster than CO2, but an accident of this scale, I mean, literally it was recorded on a global scale. Meters around the world picked up on this leak, and we had a very similar leak to this real close by in Belmont County. This was the XTO Exxon blowout. This was just a fracking well that blew out the casing. The casing blew out from too much pressure, and it released 6,000 tons of methane over 20 days. You can imagine how hard it is to fix a situation like this. This is on Captina Creek. Again, you'll see it on a map. I'll show you in a minute, just north of where they want to do this. Little aerial video here, same thing. Again, this is just a fracked well, but these fracked wells go through the salt formation that we're talking about, that they want to store the natural gas liquids in. They go through the salt formation and turn horizontally under the salt formation. So they are fracking the foundation out from under these caverns. It's just, again, what could go wrong? So imagine a blowout like this, but with the added, the addition of natural gas liquids and the salt cavern and potential collapses of this. And this is my last example, Hutchinson, Kansas. This is the most similar situation to what they want to do at Mountaineer. This is the worst case scenario as well. This happened in 2001. What happened was one day the guys running the underground storage just noticed an instantaneous drop in pressure. Uh-oh, where did it all go? They didn't know for a couple days where the natural gas that was stored underground in these salt caverns left. Well, turns out there was a crack in the casing. Again, the casings are kind of the key here. And the gas found a permeable seam of stone. And 2 days later, 7 miles away, Father Michael's here, 7 miles away, the department store in downtown Hutchinson blew up. Now, they didn't know at the time, but the reason it blew up was it used to be a hotel. And back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, didn't know, again, no records of old wells, that hotel had a salt well in its basement for a spa, and again, we have a history of salt mining in the salt formation here. There are old wells here. There's even an old well in the middle of Natrium I've heard rumor of, can't quite get hammered down, but the gas started escaping from old undocumented wells, including one in the basement of this department store. Another one, here's video of the department store. This, again, right downtown in Belmont County, that flame is coming from the well I was just talking about. 2 miles away from this explosion, there was a trailer park, and there was a well that no one knew about, literally under one of the trailers. And the underpinning of the trailer filled up with natural gas and blew up and killed 2 people. Right next to that was an old well nobody knew about right here, and a 30-foot high geyser started spraying from the ground. And again, this was one of those situations they had to use satellites to find all the leaks, because leaks were happening all over this area because that gas had found a place to escape. And it was escaping everywhere it could. And it killed people. So this is my final slide. And this was a map made by Frac Tracker for us. This is just every fracked gas well within inner circle 7 miles, outer circle 10 miles Again, 7 miles is how far gas migrated in Hutchinson, Kansas. So that's why I put it here. But I just wanted to show, again, all these gas wells are fracking either Utica or Marcellus shale, which is deeper than the salt cavern. So each one of these is piercing the salt formation and coming out the bottom and being fracked. And each one is a potential way for gas to escape. Again, these are modern wells. Who knows how many old wells and salt wells and even deep water wells could potentially, be a way for this gas to escape. But you see this red dot, I told you that XTO blowout would come into play again. That red dot is the XTO well. So well within, my estimation, 7 mile danger zone. What the permits looked at and what the permits used to say was safe was a 1/4 mile. They just looked for stuff within a 1/4 mile. But you see right here, this lighter green blob here is that strip mine piece of land I was talking about. They have literally drilled a frack well on the site of this storage. This star is where the storage wells will be. And they have the hubris to drill right on the same property through. Again, that's how Bayou Corn happened. A drill went through the salt cavern and the whole thing just collapsed right across the river. Right here, there's another one. Literally, you can stand on site, and when they were drilling these, see both of them as they went. And I just don't know where to start. If this thing collapsed, potentially the river's saltwater. If the dam broke, at least it would be less permanent, but there would be salt water flowing down the Ohio River. If this stuff leaked slow, especially the liquids, that could end up in the water. The hydrogen is a whole new thing. They're just trying to greenwash this project, but that would be hydrogen derived from natural gas. Explosive stuff should not be stored under the river. It doesn't take an expert to say that. This is a common sense situation, and we can't let these companies come in here and just do this willy-nilly without thinking about the potential consequences to us. We live here. 5 million people get their drinking water from this river, and they want to store explosive natural gas liquids and maybe even hydrogen under the river. I don't want this thing happening anywhere, but I know it shouldn't happen here. And that's the end of my presentation. Again, I'm with the Ohio Valley Environmental Coalition. Our information is there. I am going to leave it to Megan Hunter, our amazing friend and lawyer, who can tell you what you can do as far as this permit goes and how to get this thing stopped. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Alex, and hi, everyone. I'm Megan Hunter. I'm a staff attorney with Earth Justice. So right now, Mountaineer, their sister company, Powhatan Salt Company LLC, is in the process.
Megan, you're muted. Sorry.
Oh.
I made Ben the host again.
I heard Megan.
Yeah, Megan, you're good.
Yeah,
You're
we
good.
can.
Oh, okay. All right, great. Well, hopefully everyone can hear me. And feel free, please chime in the chat if it's someone other than Alex who also can't hear. Alex, I'm sorry, but you probably heard me talk enough. So right now, Powhatan Salt Company, as I mentioned, is Mountaineer's sister company. So they're the company that will do solution mining to create the caverns that would then hold the natural gas liquids. So Powhatan Salt Company is currently in the process of applying for permits to create the injection wells that are going to be used to solution mine and create those caverns. That permitting process has a few steps in it, but right now they've submitted their applications, and the Ohio Department of Natural Resources has determined that those applications are complete and required Powhatan Salt Company to publish a public notice letting people know that this was happening. So that public notice was issued in the Monroe Beacon, and it was, you know, a really little thing that just mentioned what Powhatan Salt was going to do. It didn't make any mention of Mountaineer, didn't make any mention of natural gas liquids or hydrogen or storage at all. It just mentioned a salt mining project. So I wouldn't be surprised if many people in the community haven't even heard about how far along the project is in its permitting process currently, because of that really limited public notice that had to take place. But what that public notice did was it triggered a 30-day public comment period that we're in right now. So right now is the opportunity for people to submit their comments on this project to the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, to express objections, concerns, to ask questions, to let them know about information. Maybe you have information, some of what Alex mentioned in terms of historical practices, unmarked wells, any local concerns you should really feel free to raise during this process. And not only should you feel free to, it's really important that you do. That's incredibly valuable knowledge, and it's important that the agency gets that information. And it's also important to note that these applications are arguably, you know, some of the most important permits for this facility. So this really is, there's not going to be a later permit that governs the safety of natural gas liquid storage. It is through this solution mining permitting process that they consider issues like you know, the casing issues and the well integrity issues, site location, all of these appropriateness questions. They're considering that now. And so it needs to be reckoned with now. And it's very important that we make our concerns heard and people make our concerns heard regarding the appropriateness of this location for natural gas liquids storage, and to not allow the Ohio Department of Natural Resources to just pretend like this is a salt mining project, because it's not just a salt mining project. It's much more than that. And industry guidelines for solution mining projects for storage in underground caverns, for NGL storage in underground caverns, govern every single step, from site selection to well drilling to cavern creation to monitoring. All of this is dictated in industry standards. And so we want to make sure that ODNR is considering the ultimate purpose of these wells when they are going through the permitting process, and not just treating this, you know, like a salt mine, because it's much more than that. And I see some questions about how to submit comments, and I think that these are being answered in the chat. And you can also reach out to Concerned Ohio River residents for more information, or OVAC for more information on how to submit comments. But I will go ahead and say comments can be submitted via email. So at oilandgas@dnr.ohio.gov. And hopefully someone will drop that in the chat. But for folks on the phone, that is oilandgas@dnr.ohio.gov. You can also call 614-265-6937. You can write ODNR. And again, I'll let somebody write that in the chat. If you're a caller on the phone and want me to list the address, please, you know, just chime up and we can give you that. So you have through February 6th to submit comments. Several of the groups hosting this great meeting tonight have requested an extension of the comment period to allow people more time to participate. We're still in the middle of a pandemic. There is a lot going on right now. So I think an extension is really warranted, but as of right now, we have not heard that an extension has been granted. That's something that I would also encourage people to do, is to call the agency and request an extension of the public comment period, given these extreme circumstances we're in.
I would just like to highlight something that we forgot to mention. It might seem like ancient history to us, but also taking the opportunity to pat Megan on the back, because we wouldn't even have a right to comment on these permits. These permits were already filed without public comment or without public input. And we felt really good in getting a win late last year to get these permits canceled, but they popped back up again, over the holidays in December. So we are here in a big way because of work Megan has already done, and just kudos to her. Sorry to make that awkward, Megan. But.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you, though. I really appreciate that. And that is indeed true that they just approved these the first time around without going through the required public notice and comment period. And so we did go to court to ensure that folks would have this opportunity. And now it's here, the opportunity to engage and to express concerns, objections about this project.
I believe we're kicking it over to Bev now. Is that it for you, Megan?
Well, I'm seeing a couple more questions that I will go ahead and answer because I have to hop off of here. So in terms of next steps in the process, in terms of the comment and when the permit might be issued, all of that, people are asking if there'll be a public hearing. There will be a hearing if ODNR determines that there were valid objections to the permit. So that's yet again another reason to get your objections to the permit in. And after this comment period, we've been told, but again, in the past, we've had to hold ODNR's feet to the fire on going through the steps for this permitting process. And to be fair, I do think some of that is unfamiliarity with permitting of these types of facilities. So there will also be a draft permit issued, or there should be a draft permit issued if they decide to move forward with it, and an opportunity to comment on that again. And so that would be yet another opportunity to voice concerns. But I think that most folks, on the line currently are really hoping that we don't have to go to that next step, and that we can just focus on stopping this thing. But should they decide that they're going to issue a permit, they will have to first issue a draft permit, and we'll have that chance for public comment again. And let's toss it to Bev. That'd be great.
Yeah, so I just wanted to let everybody know that Concerned Ohio River residents put together a draft comment letter that can be sent to the ODNR, as well as like a fact sheet, which has lots of the stuff that's already been mentioned tonight, plus some more facts that we've researched and put down. And I'm going to put that in the chat. I'm going to, between now and 8 o'clock, while everybody's answering questions, I'm going to individually message everybody because we had to break up the comments, so everybody's going to get a different draft comment letter, but just to make sure we get lots of different types of comments, that's why I'm sending everybody individual ones. But the rest of the document's going to be the same. It's going to have the same facts, and it's going to have the same permit deficiencies listed, so you'll get to see, all the deficiencies and the thing that Megan referenced, the fact that the permit is, full of all these flaws and everything, so, or the application. So if you have any questions about that, you can just message me in the chat and I can answer it. But you'll also get a copy of this draft comment letter and fact sheet in your email. We'll send it around. It'll probably be a PDF file, unless we can figure out another way to get it to you. But so you'll have it a couple of different ways. So. And again, basically what we're asking you to do is just copy and paste that into an email to the ODNR. That's the best way to get them comments. And like Megan said, give them a call like now and request the 60-day extension and a hearing and a fact sheet. So if you could call them at least and say that, and then send them your comment via email, however you want to do it. But all you have to do is just copy and paste that into an email. You can add in your own, language or whatever as well. So thank you.
All All right, thanks everyone. Now we're going to move on to our question and answer period. And so before we do that, I'm just going to give you some information about how to participate and how to ask questions. If you're calling in from the computer, you can go ahead and raise your hand using the reactions tab. So on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, you should see a little smiley face with the word reactions under it. If you click on it and then click raise hand, that'll put you in our question and answer queue. If you're calling in from the phone, you can dial *9 on your keypad and that will raise your hand on the phone. So please go ahead and let's see. The first question is from Matthew Adkins. Matt, do you want to go ahead and speak?
Yeah, so I have a question. So last night I watched on the news from Senator Joe Manchin. He did an interview with WSAZ, and he said, because they asked him a question about how he felt about the Keystone XL pipeline, and he said that he's like for it, that quote unquote common sense needs to be brought back, and this is going to be jobs in the area, not only for Keystone, but as well as other pipelines in the area, and that he's going to fight for them. So what can we as individuals, when our state representatives don't 100% reflect what we want, or don't even could give us a concern for our individual voices, what can we do to be more active about that?
Well, way to get right at the existential question of our time. Matt, love you, man. Yeah, kick them out is my opinion on that. I mean, we need a whole new group of politicians in there. But I did just mention in passing the Appalachian Storage Hub as a whole. Joe Manchin is very much for it, always has been. He's been one of the main proponents of this. We're in a tricky situation with him being one of the most powerful people in the Senate now. But yeah, man, I'm tired of listening to old Joe. It's been most of my life. So yeah, let's find a new senator for his place. Sorry if that's a dodge. I feel for you.
This is John here. I'll also mention it might not necessarily do any good for certain politicians that are not going to change their minds. But, you can go at least through the motions of forwarding your comments and your opinions as well as your neighbors, and at least try to get your opinions heard by your local representatives, your whoever will listen. But I mean, you're entitled to make sure your voice is heard. It's unfortunate that you've got somebody in your area that's not in alignment with your views, but that shouldn't stop you from voicing your opinion as much and as often as you can.
And this is Jill. I'll just add to that. A good way to get your voices heard is by attending village council meetings, commissioners meetings, and they have to have a public, I don't know if they call it public comment, but a forum every meeting to hear concerns or issues from area residents. So I can speak to that. And the other thing that you can do before you go to those meetings is contact the local news, the newspapers, the TV news, and tell them where you're going and what you're going to be talking about. And they show up. These topics are of interest and going to be of more and more so as we continue on down this road we're headed. So the other thing you can do is write editorials, share your opinions and submit them to the local papers and even, in the cities. So those are a couple things. And mainly it's just, make sure your voice is heard and be relentless and never stop, because it's really crucial that everybody stand up right now. And so we can have a better future, and we all have a role in that.
Next question is from Scott Bushbaum. Scott, do you want to go ahead?
Yes. So my question has to do with jurisdiction with ODNR and OEPA. Once the permitting process begins with ODNR, does it go on to OEPA? And then further, What about the Ohio Department of Agriculture and Soil?
John, I see you nodding your head to that. Megan is already off, but my understanding is ODNR is for the wells and is for the salt mining is the only ones looking at a permit. John, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think you're correct, Alex, at least in this particular situation. There are some situations where Ohio EPA might have to get involved. It depends on the circumstances. I'm not sure about Department of Agriculture and what they might have. I'm not sure if they would have any involvement whatsoever in this type of situation, but unfortunately we are left with ODNR, and that is not a friendly forum for us. They are not very helpful.
Okay.
While we're on that topic, because I see a lot of questions about West Virginia and the DEP, I can clear all those up rather quickly. With the DEP says this is all outside of their jurisdiction. It is in Ohio. We're not exactly clear. I say under the river, because if you drill the wells right next to the river and you're going 2.5 miles deep and you're creating millions of barrels size caverns, you're under the river in my eyes. But the West Virginia owns the river up to the low water point on the Ohio side, but we have no say in this. We don't even have say in the water uptake. I was actually just talking to a West Virginia DNR officer because she heard about this, and of course, first time she's hearing about it, and she's like, "Wait, why don't West Virginia DNR have any say in this?" And I said, "Well, go ask your boss, because I'd like to know too. If they were to build a barge dock, they would have to talk to us, and that would be more Army Corps engineers than anything. But West Virginia just says, not our jurisdiction. And they also say if this extends under West Virginians, there is no legal obligation for anybody to tell West Virginians that they're living on top of this thing. That came from the DNR or the DEP, sorry, acronyms and agencies, but West Virginia doesn't have anything to do with this legally, unfortunately. We should.
Megan, could you speak to the fact that it is appropriate and necessary for West Virginia folks to comment on the Ohio Department of Natural Resources application?
Sure. Yeah. So I couldn't resist staying on, y'all, so I'm still here. Yes, West Virginia folks can absolutely comment. Anyone, potentially impacted or concerned or with knowledge and reason to contribute can absolutely comment. And same with, I know there was mention of can West Virginia DEP comment. It sounds like that might be unlikely, but if you're able to get some of those agencies to comment in your state, yes, they can comment. And I wanted to speak to the question about the regulation across agencies of this facility, because it is complicated. So this specific permit is for the injection. So that is only with DNR, as Alex and John stated. And so those are where we're directing our comments for this. The impoundment above it, they had to get a dam permit for that. That was also through DNR, separate division, but still DNR. But Ohio EPA did engage with that in approving a groundwater monitoring plan that exists, but that's only for the impoundment itself. It's not for the injection wells below. And then you have a lot of other agencies that are going to be involved in terms of the Army Corps being involved for the pipelines that are going to be crossing the river. The Ohio EPA being involved for the 401 water quality certification, the Army Corps being involved for the 404 permit, which is to dredge and fill. Sorry that I'm just saying these numbers, but most of these permits have already been issued. Some, potentially will expire, and there'll be other opportunities to challenge. Some there may already be grounds to challenge, but I don't want to dissuade anyone from reaching out to an agency they feel like their concerns are relevant at. And if that agency doesn't hear you, or they don't land for that agency, or they tell you they don't have jurisdiction, I can't recommend enough reaching out to one of these organizations to get clarifying information, to make sure your voice is heard by the appropriate agency. Because what we do see happen a lot is that people can just be passed from agency to agency and everybody saying that they don't have jurisdiction. And the reality is your concerns probably do fit somewhere.
Roxanne, do you want to go ahead with your question? Roxanne, you might be on mute.
Yep. Roxanne Graw from Athens County, Athens County's Future Action Network, and Buckeye Environmental Network. Is this the second time this permit has gone through or been applied? Second application for this facility. So what were some of the issues that came up with the first application? Didn't it expire? Okay, so what were some of the issues? Are those some of those issues that were brought up before that you think that ODNR did not pay attention to in the letters of concern that citizens should be writing?
Yeah, so the first time around, what happened with these permits was there wasn't a comment period. And it was also so early on, and they're just talking about Powhatan Salt Company, right? They're talking about a salt mine. So we just didn't have the general knowledge amongst the local population about what was actually happening. So there were not comments, as far as I'm aware, submitted, or very few, the first time around. And then when the permit expired, they just never gave the opportunity for public comment. They just issued them anyway. So I mean, we're looking back at, like, I think it was 2016, the first time these things were issued. I mean, it was really quite a while ago. So this is really, I think, you know, it's been about the past year, I think, that people have been doing a deep dive into what those issues are. And in terms of the, you know, I saw your question in the chat as well, Roxanne, in terms of the regulatory, the ways that the applications don't live up to Ohio regulations and Ohio Department of Natural Resources regulations. I would say that there are many that we have identified. One is just simply how slim the application is itself, how little information is there. So there's no discussion of local geology contained in that application packet. They don't tell you how wide the salt is, how deep the salt is, the geometry of the ultimate caverns. They don't go through a drilling plan. There's no detailed drilling plan. There's no detailed lost circulation plan. There's no emergency plan. And these are things that are all required. A contingency plan is required by ODNR applications, regulations. So these are all things that should have to be in there. An emergency response plan should have to be in there. And then when you take that and you think about this second step of industry standards not even being looked at for this, it should be a valid concern of ODNR and something that falls within the jurisdiction of what our ODNR can consider in this permitting process. And then lastly, you know, I'm hearing some comments about if it's all about geology, which, don't get me wrong, a lot of it is about geology, but a lot of it is also about what Alex's very point about, look at all that is within this area, and you're only looking at a quarter-mile area of review. And the chief absolutely has discretion to look at a larger area of review if there's reason to do so. And so providing him with reason to increase that area of review is very valuable. And also, there are different steps that are triggered if there is widespread public interest. So somebody mentioned a fact sheet earlier. For ODNR to, you know, spend time developing a fact sheet that would actually tell the community what this is about and what they've done in their analysis, all of that, that's something they only have to do if there's widespread public interest. So even if at the very least all you're able to say is, I'm really concerned about this project, I really want to know more, please prepare a fact sheet, that does demonstrate something that has a lot of value.
Well, pressure, yeah, seems like the key from all of this is hundreds of people submitting their letters of concern and forcing ODNR once again to have go through the public process. Even though we're still in COVID and this is going to be, you know, one of their horrible Zoom meetings, it's forcing them to do what's already in the law that they're supposed to do that they love to circumvent. So thanks for that. Nice to see everybody also.
Hearing Megan, I remembered, and I don't know how I failed to say this, but the area is Swiss cheese. I mean, it's literally full of holes. So I just wouldn't want to see anything stored there. We even found out the other day from Frac Tracker, there is a waste brine injection well across the river on the West Virginia side, and those have been known to cause earthquakes. So, you know, just what could go wrong? I can't harp on that enough.
Cindy, do you want to go ahead with your question?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead.
I was wondering, what's the feasibility of habitation in Clarington, Ohio, if this project is completed?
I wouldn't want to live there. And particularly it's the groundwater. They get their drinking water from groundwater wells 1 mile away. That would be the number one, like, most likely scary thing for me if I lived there.
The other thing that nobody has mentioned, and when you showed that video, Alex, of the proposed site, we call those trains bomb trains. I mean, highly volatile, just an accident, actually an explosion waiting to happen. So I certainly wouldn't want to live with those, you know, a mile from my house all the time. And that's just one other, you know, concern, is hauling this stuff by train.
If it collapsed, I mean, 0-0, they would be like Bayou Corn. They would have to move, and probably people on both sides of the river, and, you know, just depending on factors.
Does anybody know if there would be increased truck traffic?
They seem to want to move everything via train and pipeline. It'd be trains coming in and pipelines going out is what I've read.
But think about the excavation period when they're building that huge reservoir, and all the dust and noise and who knows what. So that'll be a huge nuisance, and you don't know how long that'll last.
What about the barges? Has anyone considered how much vibration that those barges make moving up and down that river? I mean, I've lived along that river most of my life. My gosh, you can feel the vibrations.
I know that feeling. Yeah, believe it or not, being on that river bottom land next to the river, you can feel those barges. And yeah, that couldn't be good for a dam is the first thing that comes to my mind there.
Scary.
Yeah.
Patricia, Libby, do you want to go ahead with your question? Patricia? You might be on mute. Let's see, Kelsey, do you want to go ahead with your question? We'll come back to Patricia.
Yeah, so my question, and I thought of this when Bev was kind of outlining the process of sending in the different comments to ODNR. I know some groups, especially, I know OVEC created an action alert where it kind of automatically generated for you the, like, sending a letter to the ODNR. And I know it's not good, but I did the classic where I don't really read it or customize it. I just like click it and send it. Is there a risk that, I know that there have been issues with comment periods in the past where, like, if a certain amount of people say the same thing, it's counted as one comment instead of like the entirety of like even if it's hundreds or thousands of people who submitted it. Is there any kind of risk, like, I guess like in my efforts to get people to submit comments, I haven't been emphasizing how important it is that the comments are unique to each person. And so I just wanted to check in about that to see what the concern would be there.
Yeah, I can comment on that, Kelsey, and thank you for asking that. I meant to mention it, but so if you did submit comments via OVEX online action network form, which I'll put a link to that in the chat as well. It's basically like a petition and it goes straight to the ODNR. They get an email after you submit your name. And it is an automated form, but even if you have already done that or you plan to, it's all good. Like you can also submit your unique comments via email at this time. And we encourage folks to do that, like Kelsey said, and add in your unique comments. Even if you just talk about, you know, the fact that you live along the Ohio River in the region, that's a unique comment. So yeah, that's a good question. I already checked with Megan and she said it's fine to submit, you know, various comments that way.
Thank you.
I wanted to follow up on that too, and just mention that I've seen boilerplate language on a number of different agency sites making comments to that very point, where they specifically say that if they receive comments that are on form letters that are basically identical, that they can't ignore them. By law, they can't ignore them necessarily, but I mean, yes, they can. I mean, they certainly can. They can, you know, just put them at the bottom of the pile and not pay any attention to them. So, you know, if you are able to generate something that is unique, please do. If you know, if it's just, if you're very busy and you would rather not, it's still worth it to go through the effort to do a form letter and sign off on that as well. It just has less persuasive value, that's all. And it might not have your intended effect. So it's certainly preferable to be more unique and put something more personal, change a word here and there, whatever you can do to make it not look quite as formish. But either way, it's still worth the effort of making your voice heard.
Patricia, did you want to go ahead with your question?
Yes, this is the first time I've contacted your organization. I don't know really anything about you. I was raised in Ohio. I presently live in Philadelphia. It breaks my heart, though, to see all of the fracking that's going on. And now to hear that they're going to be storing gas under the Ohio River is just heartbreaking to me. You probably all heard today on the news that Biden is canceling out the KXL pipeline. And there's been news around here, around Philadelphia, with some of the projects and pipelines that we have going through, that some of these have been stopped successfully. Does your organization have lawyers that you work with? Can you go as high as sending something through to Biden or his environmental organizations to protest all of this?
Yes, and actually, two of them are on the line. John here, who's been speaking, and Megan Hunter. They've been working, Megan's been working with us for years, and she was with Fair Shake Environmental Legal Services first and has moved on to Earth Justice, a national organization, but John is now with Fair Shake. And we are so grateful, and I can't emphasize enough how impactful it is for us to have access to so much valuable information from them, and the support they give not only to us as people, the people on the front lines fighting, but to the community members who are suffering from the pollution from these oil and gas facilities. So really, yeah, it's incredible the collaboration we have with not only amazing attorneys, but also national and even yeah, so it's a vast network, and we're really grateful for all of our collaborative efforts. And Patricia, sorry to hear that, this is upsetting you, but certainly we understand, and we're here. And if you want to just talk or learn more about it, please reach out to us at Concerned Ohio River Residents, and we're happy to offer support in any way we can.
Yeah, Patricia, I second everything Jill said, of course, and I didn't get to spend a lot of time introducing OVEC, but OVEC has been around for over 30 years now, and we have a whole wing now that is policy, politics, that side of things, called the Clean Elections Campaign. And yeah, we're definitely working all angles that we can think of, and in any which way we can. So yeah, stay in touch. You can join, become a member, there's action alerts, regular action alerts, all kinds of that sort of stuff. So please reach out to both us and CORE after the show.
Hey, can I follow up on what I said earlier? I just found the language that I was referencing from. This is from the federal regulations.gov form. That if you were to submit a comment or any kind of text to a federal regulation, this is the language that comes up. And I thought this was to the point earlier about too many form letters. It says organizations often encourage their members to submit form letters designed to address issues common to their membership. Organizations, including industry associations, labor unions, and conservation groups, sometimes use form letters to voice their opposition or support of a proposed rulemaking. Many in the public mistakenly believe that their submitted form letter constitutes a vote regarding the issues concerning them. Although public support or opposition may help guide important public policies, agencies make determinations for a proposed action based on sound reasoning and scientific evidence rather than a majority of votes. A single well-supported comment may carry more weight than 1,000 form letters. So I just thought that was interesting that the federal government went out of its way to say that, text before you're able to add your comment. So that's the kind of, I think, there are variations of that attitude, I think, that you'll receive at any agency that you deal with, but that's one way that agencies deal with form letters.
Yeah, and thanks for that, John. And also, if you open up the link that I sent around to everybody in private message, you'll see what the main points we're looking for in the comments would be, which would be public health and safety. And then if you have any local knowledge of the area, are two really big things that would have more weight. But obviously we encourage everybody to submit comments. So definitely want to emphasize the uniqueness of it.
Yeah,
I wouldn't be opposed if anybody, it can be as simple as this is effing stupid, don't do it. I want to hear people's voices, and it doesn't have to be all the technical stuff. We have that under control. Thanks mostly to Megan, by the way. But yeah, just say what you feel and say what you know. Again, you don't have to be an expert to know this is a stupid idea.
This
I'd
is
like to
Shauna
make a
Leary.
comment. Sorry. My name is Alexis Goldsmith. I'm with Beyond Plastics. And I would just urge people in their comments to urge the Ohio DNR to look at the big picture of this facility and the petrochemical build out, because this is the wrong investment for the community to make, not only for the existential threat of climate change, but it's the wrong investment for the local economy, because we will see a divestment from petrochemicals and fossil fuels in the future, not only because of the climate crisis, but because of the plastic pollution crisis, which these natural gas liquids are destined to become. And plastic pollution is a crisis. The 8.5 billion pounds of plastic that have been produced since 1950, half of that has been produced in just the last 13 years. And that's going to increase exponentially if we allow these these petrochemical facilities to be built. And microplastic pollution especially is an unseen crisis. It is literally everywhere in our environment. We are breathing it, we are eating it and drinking it. The average person is ingesting a credit card's worth of microplastic every single week. And a study that came out last month found that microplastics are on the fetal side of human placentas. So it's crossing the placenta. It could be crossing the blood-brain barrier. It could be accumulating in our bodies, just like ocean gears. So this is a health crisis as well. And we have to stop the flow of plastic pollution, and it starts with stopping these facilities. We really need a circular, sustainable economy that moves away from plastics. And these facilities, the benefits that these investors are promising for their economy, those are false promises. This is the wrong investment for Ohio to make in its future. And I would just urge you to include the big picture in your comments. So thank you.
This is
couldn't have
Sean
said it better
O'Leary. I just
myself.
wanted to
Thanks,
say
Alexis.
that, I'm sorry, this is Sean O'Leary. I just wanted to respond to the question that was raised just a minute ago from Philadelphia. It's noteworthy that one of the parties to this issue is the Long Ridge Energy, I can't remember the exact name. Thank you. The Long Ridge Energy Terminal, which is owned by New Fortress. New Fortress is also the company that in Eastern Pennsylvania is trying to build an exporting port on the Delaware River to carry liquefied natural gas out of Northeast Pennsylvania. And so there is that point of nexus. And I know the folks in Pennsylvania have done an awful lot of work on New Fortress and what they're doing. And since the Long Ridge Terminal is one of the two principal prospective customers of the Mountaineer storage facility, it might be worthwhile to at least have some discussions with the folks in Eastern Pennsylvania about what kind of progress they've made with New Fortress there and what they know, because there may be some opportunities for collaboration with them.
Cool. I didn't know that yet. Thank you.
I'm looking at the time and we have 7:55. And so Ben, should we take another question or should I make some closing remarks?
Yeah, we might have time for one more question. And my queue is Leah, and then if you have other questions, please go ahead and put them in the chat. We'll save the chat and try to get responses out to everyone too. Thank you.
I just wanted to say, the more I learn about this, the more I have real questions about this, how anybody could even think this is a good idea to begin with. And then they seem to be shifting because, you know, we heard about an $84 billion MOU to support all this from China to begin with. DALIM has gone away. Hopefully PTTG will go away, but now they're saying there might be hydrogen. And so the solution mining permit, I just wanted everybody to oppose the solution mining permit itself, because if that goes through and they actually carve out these caverns, not only will that support Natrium and Westlake, major polluters, right, Alex? Major polluters across the river, you know, there's a lot in it for them. But if they carve out these salt caverns, what would keep them from storing something else, like even radioactive frac waste, or, you know, so they'll find a use for them if they carve them out. So we have to make sure. And another thing I really worry about is 380 million gallons out of the Ohio River. I mean, dilution's not the solution, but you know, they're destroying all this water. So I wish that the West Virginia DEP would get involved in something like this. I sometimes wonder if they even has hit their radar. But I think some West Virginia folks, if they really commented to the ODNR and then they piled on to the DEP, that might be very helpful too. Unless somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I'm thinking right now.
Sure, for sure. And yeah, to Leacher's point, this really is a key piece of infrastructure for the entire build out as a whole. I can't emphasize this enough. This is a keystone piece to the Appalachian storage hub. And yeah, to Alexis's earlier point, I couldn't have said it better myself. That's really to make plastics more than anything else. So yeah, this is a part of the bigger picture for sure.
Ben, is it okay if we run over for a few minutes? Because I'd really like for Sean to have an opportunity, if you don't mind, to speak a little bit about the economic impacts and, you know, the myth of job creation from the petrochemical build out.
Yeah, first, can we take a quick question from Travis?
Sure.
Travis has his hand up. Yep.
How y'all doing? Y'all can hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm from Louisiana. I just wanted to make a comment. I just wanted to tell everybody, please, like, you know, try to make them comments as soon as possible, because in Louisiana, I come from Downsonville, Louisiana. We had a lot of explosions of chlorine, and a lot of my friends had passed away from the COVID-19 crisis due to, like, you know, complications with the chlorine water when they were affecting their kidneys and other organs. Also, too, I was in Texas with Miss Diane Wilson up there battling the Formosa plant, and we had seen like the waterways there with the plastic pellets and stuff, and the plastic powder in the water and stuff, and it was just horrible. And then like the neighboring town, Bayou, where they had Bayou Con Cinco was at. You know, I live in a neighboring town next to Belrose, Louisiana. Cause that's where it happened at. A lot of I had about 3 or 4 church members that went to the same church I went to that was staying in their community, and they haven't got confiscated too much for their losses. You know, somebody had a home, they had to go there and forced to live in like a kind of like a little bad looking house that they had to go and get and have pay rent at. So I mean, a lot of people get affected by these incidents and stuff with the NGL plants and stuff producing PVCs and so forth. And I just want y'all to, you know, make sure that I'm comment, because all these air pollution and stuff that it causes, it also could make a higher risk of COVID cases. Because I stay near St. John and St. James Parish, and they are like the highest in the nation right now with COVID deaths.
Thank you so much, Travis. And it makes me so sad because you've had to deal with the pollution from these facilities so long, and now, you know, you're more susceptible to these horrible pandemics. So I appreciate you being here so much and send you lots of love, and please keep in touch. And if there's anything we can do to help you, please let us know. Thank you.
Will do. Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, this is Sean O'Leary. I think, Ben, you had asked, or maybe it was Leah asked about the job creation claims that are being put out there by the various industries, whether it's natural gas or petrochemicals or some of the affiliated industries. And I think Alex mentioned it earlier in his comments, that in fact, the notion of job creation and economic development associated with those industries has been a myth with respect to the fracking boom, which has already taken place, and would also continue to be a myth even with the build out of the plastics industry in the region. And I would mention 2 things for you. First of all, within the next 2 weeks, the Ohio River Valley Institute will be coming out with an analysis on the economic impacts of the fracking boom in the region, looking at a county by county level in the Ohio Valley, in Pennsylvania, and in West Virginia. So you maybe want to be on the lookout for that, because basically what it's going to say is that while gross domestic product in those counties has more than doubled the national average, the region has actually lost its share of both income, of jobs, and also of population. The translation is there has been no economic uplift as a result of all of this, all of the fracking activity. The other thing I would mention is that with respect to the petrochemical industry, you may want to visit the Ohio River Valley Institute.org website, because there you can find a couple of blog posts that specifically refute the jobs creation claims that have been made by the industry. I know I contributed a blog post that was titled, Lies, Damned Lies, and Economic Studies, in which we specifically explain why the projections that have been trumpeted by the industry and by a lot of policymakers will not come to fruition, even if the PTT cracker and other crackers were constructed in the region. So there is material and evidence out there that you can use to refute the claims of opponents who argue that the development of the petrochemical industry and increased fracking would in fact be economic game changers or even major contributors to the region's local economy. And please feel free to contact me if you want further information, or as I said, go to the Ohio River Valley Institute.org website, where you can find a lot of resource materials.
Thank you so much. That's crucial information that we want to do everything we can to disseminate, especially to our local officials and state officials who are still making the claims and promoting these industries on economic development and jobs. Benj, what do you think?
Are there any further questions? I don't see any hands up.
Well, then I guess I'll say thank you, everyone. And I thought about how to close out a meeting like this, and I felt like a way to do that would be to share briefly that I have been going to Belmont County Commissioners meetings for years. And like I mentioned earlier, calling the news stations and newspapers. I have a relationship with them now, and they show up. And in this particular meeting, I went from the Omni injection well that is threatening the safety of people in St. Clairsville, Ohio. I talked about, invited the commissioners to this meeting and gave them information about this facility, as well as the cracker plant, and then tied it into fracking and all the risks and dangers and misinformation. But then I ended my little speech with reminding them that we've contacted the commission repeatedly and asked them to join us in creating a better vision for the Ohio Valley. And I told them that as time has gone on, we now have economists, philanthropists, scientists, business people, environmental groups. I explained that we have a vast network of locals, but also national and some international support. And all of these organizations, people want to work with the commissioners, with the local community to help, transition and immediately away from fossil fuel boom and bust industries, and in its place, embrace regenerative agriculture and sustainable and a green energy solution. So I just like to end on that note and say that I feel hopeful now. We have a reason to be hopeful. The fact that we have so many people on this call and interested in these issues gives me a sense of peace and gratitude. And I just want to say thank you again, and I wish you all peace, and please stay in touch and let us know how we can be of help, and we can use all the help we can get in return. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
You all take care.
Bye. Bye.